All those, Councillor Simons.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we not speak on this?
No, Councillor. No, Councillor Simons. We'll move into the vote first. So, all those in favour? Against? Okay then, so that's carried. Okay then, so now going on to public speaking. I've got a number of speakers that may go over the 20 minutes. And because it's an extraordinary meeting, we've had some good questions in. I'm going to allow it to go till the end of the questions tonight. So first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Owen Reid to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Julie Jackson, the leader of the council. So the Labour Party told us residents in May last year that, I quote, "There is a clear choice for residents in Nuneaton and Bedworth. We will protect free garden waste collections and you won't pay £35 a year for your green bin." Well, you haven't completely lied to us as we're going to be paying £40, but what do you say to residents who voted for you because of this pledge? Or, well, should I say because of this lie? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. That is actually to Councillor Shepherd. So, Councillor Shepherd, would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Reid, this council has been affected enormously by the Tory government's obsession with austerity policy. Many Nuneaton and Bedworth residents have had to rely on food banks to survive. Our homeless numbers are rising and people are being sanctioned by DWP, forcing them into poverty. This council has to find ways to bridge the deficit imposed on us by Westminster. We could have done part of this by ending the non-statutory green bin collection altogether, but chose to save the service by offering this opt-in service to residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. I would like to invite Mrs Michelle Concord to make her statement.
Okay, I wanted to speak on all three, but so I'll have to be very quick to make my points. I mean, the green bins, it's been a PR disaster. It's been very, very badly introduced, and it's a very retrograde step because we were actually in a climate emergency if no one had noticed. And more people are going to burn and landfill the cutting, so it's a great pity. It's a shame it wasn't taken as a call-in when it came to Cabinet, and then it could have all been properly discussed, but it wasn't. On the markets, I absolutely agree with the motion. We as the public need to know what is being proposed for our markets. I know not everybody likes the market, but it is a very, very important part of the town, particularly for Nuneaton, probably less so in Bedworth from my experience. And Christmas Eve must be a normal working day. It was an absolute missed opportunity because it's not just the market brings in people also visit the shops and they pay for parking. So the fact that market stallholders were going to be charged more for what should have been a normal working day, I think was very, very poor show, and I hope that won't happen again. In terms of item 3, I mean, I don't think that the email should have actually been leaked in the first instance because it was to councillors, it wasn't, made for it wasn't there for all the public and things. Social media is an absolute minefield. I have seen lots of comments on social media on all sorts of topics from both sides of the chamber, and so I think everyone's equally to blame about sort of how things are actually phrased. A lot of people obviously don't understand how things work, which council's responsible for what, and there is a lot of rubbish actually posted on Facebook. So it is a terribly difficult one. I think the fact that the email was sent at 1 in the morning, it is probably indicative that things had been going on all during the day, and probably it was sent in the heat of the moment. So The fact of the traveller seems to have been used as a political football, people just wanting to try and score points as opposed to actually trying to resolve the issue, for the town. So, I don't know if I was a councillor how I would vote on this one and things, but I think everyone needs to be much more aware of what they say, because certainly I've had, pretty nasty comments, against myself, certainly against my husband, and, it's not very nice and things. So, some people don't engage their brains before they write on social media and things, but that's from both sides of the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, on the call. I would like to invite David Parr to ask his question, please.
I'd like to use my 3 minutes to pose some questions for the Council. I don't expect answers to all of them tonight, but it would be good if they could be put in the public domain afterwards. So here goes. Has the Council considered the discrimination against certain residents which is inherent in this charge? The financial penalty falls only upon those residents who wish to use the green bin service, obviously. These are typically people who actively cultivate gardens, greening the environment, capturing carbon and preventing excess water runoff. They are being forced to pay £40. Meanwhile, people who have paved over all or part of their properties and have no need for a green bin will pay nothing. It is precisely the people who contribute positively to the environment who the Council should be encouraging, not penalising. What has been the uptake of the £40 charge since this was introduced and publicised? If this is much lower than before and many fewer green bins are to be emptied, what effect might this have on the employment of staff engaged in collection? Has the Council an estimate of the reduction in the amount of material likely to be collected? What income has the Council derived in the past from use of the material collected in green bins and subsequently composted? And has there been any projection of the likely loss of this income from reduced collections? Has consideration been given to the possibility that people who have paid £40 will find their bin being used by others who have not paid, possibly to the extent that they themselves will not be able to make full use of it? Will we need bin vigilantes? I myself have a garden with various trees, many of them bearing fruit, a grassed area, shrubs and flowers. I also grow soft fruit and vegetables, which, unlike supermarket produce, involve food miles to my kitchen of about 10 yards. The garden is a haven for wildlife, birds nest there, squirrels sometimes steal my fruit. Even the odd toad has popped in to eat a few of the unfortunately numerous slugs. I have 2 compost bins, green ones, and I use these for all soft materials, but I would need the green bin. I have 2 personal compost bins, which I use for soft materials, but I need the green bin occasionally for a limited amount of woody prunings, which are not suitable for domestic composting. I am not prepared to pay £40 for the few times I make use of the green bin collection. And as a result, the small amount of food waste which previously went into the green bin will now go into my black bin, from where it will probably end up in landfill, generating methane. This is a short-sighted policy, is unlikely to provide much income, and effectively writes off the huge investment in supplying the green bins to thousands of households in the first place. The Council should reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Park. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Parr, no one will be forced to pay the £40. This is an opt-in scheme. We believe the £40 charge will cover all collection costs. There will be a positive reduction. There will be possibly a reduction of garden waste collected, and that may lead to some employees moving from green waste collections to residual waste collections. All of Nuneaton Bedford's residual waste goes to waste to energy plants and not to landfill. Unfortunately, we find ourselves having to make these difficult decisions as a result of this Tory government's ongoing austerity programme. Thank you.
Thanks, thank you, Councillor Shepherd. I would like to invite Mrs. Denise Gadget to make her statement, please.
Please bear with me, all these are interconnected, these questions. As I approach my 66th year, I find with every passing day how extremely disappointed I have become with the attitude and money management, or should I say lack of the serving Labour Party. I realise that councils can charge for discretionary services like garden waste, and this has, without a shadow of doubt, proved to be extremely unpopular with the residents of this borough. I clearly recollect seeing the following words even in my senior years: protect free garden waste, waste collections, you won't pay £35 a year for your green bin. Currently under UK legislation, manifestos are not currently legally binding. Realising how a few carefully crafted, meaningless words can come into play from this Labour Party have surely duped the residents of this borough, possibly in order to gain votes. This clearly shows a distinct lack of respect, coupled with false promises. One wonders how they all sleep at night. Well, it appears now that one of these misleading stories has come to the fore. I sincerely hope that the residents of this borough remember your false promises at the next election. In my opinion, these proposed charges could prove to be counterproductive. Surely reducing cycling is not a good step, and no doubt fly tipping will be on the increase and in abundance. This is a total disaster, as we already have, as everyone knows, unless you haven't opened your eyes, quite a severe problem with this as it is in our borough. Surely it would have been more sensible, rather than hiking up user charges, to be making sensible savings through a better procurement strategy, innovation and more joint working. What I fail to comprehend is why the council use their staff, vehicles and fuel to collect all recycling and let a contractor keep all the money. Does everybody realise in the gallery for the last 3 years the council hasn't received 1 penny for recycling? They then proceed to go and look at the highest charging councils, including London, for collecting green waste and do a mean average of those. Why don't you look up the road 5 miles to Hinckley and Bedworth? Sorry, Hinckley and Bosworth Council, who only charge £24. Is that too near and too uncomfortable for you? There's constant talk of cuts that must be made, and you are seen to be continually blaming either the opposition or the government for this. Why don't you instead lead by example and spend wisely throughout the borough by being a fair and well-measured party? I'm totally disappointed as a former TU rep that this happens. Do the residents in the gallery know that parts of Camp Hill were subsidised for almost 10 years under a thing called Pinch, Pride in Camp Hill? Yes, they had all their heavy old fridges, settees and that collected for nothing. Last year,
Miss Gadget,
I'm talking, I haven't had my 3
Miss
minutes.
Gadget, you have had your time.
£126 was given by Warwickshire County Council.
Can I ask you?
71,000. I've got a minute left on my clock.
No, you've not. You've had your time, thanks.
No, you don't want to know, do you? You spend 200,000 on a useless climbing frame. You don't want to know. You don't want to know. This is the trouble with you. Closure in and closure out. You spend enough money on the gypsies, 120,000, making people charge. It's disgusting.
Take them away. Can we have the mic back, please?
You can.
So we can move on to the next speaker.
Let me remind you what Jeremy Corbyn said.
Can we move on to the next speaker, please?
Jeremy Corbyn said,
Can
for
we
the
move
many,
on
not
to
for
the
the
next
few.
speaker, please?
So the rest of us haven't finished yet, don't worry. There's still time.
Right, thank you for that. I'd like to move on to the next person now, and that's Mrs. Sonia Wilson, please.
Good evening. I want to speak about the market, but not really the market, the residents of this borough. Nuneaton has been a market town since 1226. I looked it up. 10, perhaps 12 years ago, we won Market of the Year. 10 years ago, the market reached from the top of Queen's Road down to Wilkinson's. Abbey Street was full. It went from the George Eliot statue right up to the bus station. This morning I counted 17 empty stalls. I know that January is the time that stall holders will take holidays and the weather hasn't been kind. One stall holder had his truck stolen, so couldn't turn up this morning. But there's no compensation for him. He still has to pay his full rent. We are the most expensive town in the area for market stalls. There's no it's not cheaper for them in, say, the first 3 months of the year when business is not good for them. Other towns, they also have compensation for parking. Here, the traders pay full parking. If they employ 2 or 3 people, they also have to pay the parking for their employees. Now, I love Nuneaton. I've chosen to live here and to stay here. And I think we have a wonderful town. But our market is disappearing. Slowly it's disappearing. Take a walk on a Wednesday or a Saturday. It's what brings people into town. On a Wednesday you see people meeting up and they go to both the shops, the coffee shops and the market. Both the shops and the market, they need to work together, and they do. They complement one another. One stall holder, he had 3 stalls and he paid £86 for the 3. Another stall holder I spoke to had exactly the same area. He paid £72. There was a price difference. One stall holder was encouraged to spread his stall out into the neighbouring stall that was empty to make it look more full. So he had bigger space. Up the other end of Queen's Road, a stall holder wanted to put out an extra table, which he did, and he was charged £26 for putting out the extra table. Now, I'm not saying that, I am saying there is something unfair here. Something needs to be looked at, that everybody is charged equally. That one can't be allowed to spread out and the other one has to pay if he wants to spread out. May I just say one more thing? Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a market for a long, long time, and this is something you're all involved in. Do you want to lose the market on your watch?
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you. I'd like to invite Mr. John Merrick to make his statement, please.
Thank you for awarding me 3 minutes to make my views known. Most of my learned colleagues, or a few of my learned colleagues, have already covered most of what I was about to say about this rubbish green bin scenario that we're facing. Why or how on earth you'd come up with this idea, I just do not know. But one thing that does strike me, having read... first things first. I'm so disgusted with Nuneaton Labour-controlled council that once again we haven't had, first and foremost, communication through the post, which wouldn't have cost you a great deal, regarding the green bin scenario, instead of having to pick up tidbits here and there from different sources to find out what's going on about how this green bin scenario is going to be worked, controlled and expended. Right, I've covered that bit. The next thing that springs to mind for me is, again, in a newspaper article that somebody produced for me, it stated that there's over 90% of our residents in Nuneaton, possibly Bedworth included, who are against and will not be paying this £40 per green bin. Anybody with any calculators in front of them would like to maybe do a few calculations and tell me how much money you're going to have as a deficit, when I'm sure the idea of bringing up this £40 charge per person, per bin rather, there's been an estimate there as to how much money you're going to reap because you haven't had the funds that you wanted from the hierarchy, shall we say. So I'm really, really interested to know how, not only that, how you're going to handle, someone else mentioned earlier, when this refuge of green bins, no matter what it is, what it's always been, when some of our residents, and I'm not going to be one of them, I will state that quite clearly here and now, although I do empathise with them, when some of our residents are going to find ulterior places to deposit their green bin refuse when they've filled their containers, you're going to have more expense, more trouble, more time spent clearing up the debris, fly tipping, additional, and I must ask, when we have the travellers, otherwise known as gypsies, continuously in this borough, and you've had to clear up after them, how much have you charged the gypsies or the travellers when you cleared up their mess?
Mr. Mayor, the travellers is not on the agenda.
Well, I do apologise for making that remark then.
If you can just stick to what's on the agenda, I appreciate it.
Fine, I do apologise for making that remark. Very quickly, I don't know how much time I've got left of my 3 minutes, but infrastructure, quickly, Coton Arches, I've driven around there 2-3 times today, studying the hold-ups with the traffic lights.
Mr. Merrick. 6
sets you've got there.
Mr. Merrick, again.
There is no improvement.
Mr. Merrick, again, that is not on there. Thank you for your comments, thank you. I would like to invite Loves, please, to make your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm disappointed to start with a cabinet meeting that was due to take place was in fact cancelled due to lack of business. It may have escaped the council's notice that this borough is in a mess. I'd also like to raise recent comments made by Councillor Longdon, where he describes members of the electorate as brain dead and morons. I, like others, am appalled that a councillor, no less a former mayor, would make such derogatory comments about the residents of this borough. The apology was too little and too late, and once again, no reaction or censure has been forthcoming from either the council or from the Labour Party. I even asked Councillor Tandy if any such censure had been made, or if it had even been dealt with, and she refused to answer me, because my politics apparently are different from hers, and therefore I'm unworthy of a response. So I'm therefore asking officially, please, could somebody clarify here and now what action has been taken by the local Labour Party and by the council. I will add to that, it's been 15 days since I sent off a formal complaint and I haven't received a reply, and I believe it's 10 working days. So I would actually like to know what's going on. So the officers as well, you have something that you need to answer as well. Finally, the issue of an additional charge levied on emptying the green bins. At what point did the council realise it needed such a charge? Was it before or after the election of last year? If it was before the elections, you openly lied to local residents in your manifesto. If it was after the elections, then it really raises issues in your ability to run the borough and produce a balanced and considered budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. Councillor Jackson, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the statements/questions. In response, I have to say that I think our borough is benefiting from some imaginative thinking. As we have recently published the Transforming Nuneaton Prospectus with our partners, Warwickshire County Council, which has already attracted support from the local enterprise partnership of some £7.5 million. We have a thriving commercial arm of the council, Nuneaton and Bedworth Community Enterprises Limited, which is making in the region of £400,000 this year and adding to our budget year on year.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. This is nothing what to do with the subject.
Absolutely. Well done, well
Manifesto to what we want to say as well.
The first paragraph of Mr. Setkovich's statement/questions talked about the borough being in a mess. I'm responding to that.
There's no question there, that's a statement.
Can I pass it to the mic? Mic, please. Can't hear. Okay.
Could you stand nearer the mic,
Nearer
please?
the mic. We have a thriving commercial arm in NABSAL, Nuneaton and Bedworth Community Enterprises Limited, which is making in the region of £400,000 this year and adding to our budget year on year. It has also received interest from other councils as a good example of income generation. I believe in talking our towns up and not down. Nuneaton and Bedworth is a great town to live in, to work in and to spend your leisure time. But most importantly, we have the very best communities going. And yes, I will celebrate living in our borough. Your second paragraph refers to a matter that I understand is subject to an official complaint. And as such, I feel it very appropriate that Councillor Tandy did not respond to you in this matter as Chair of the Audit and Standards Committee, and that it will be looked at appropriately under council procedures. In conclusion, discussions in regard to charging for green waste were made at a meeting of Cabinet in October.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I would like to invite Mrs. Kath Price to make her statement.
Residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth thank Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council for implementing green bill charges in a thoughtful way. Aware that NBBC could have scrapped this discretionary service altogether, but instead offered residents a choice is greatly appreciated. We are all aware of the constant challenges that local government are experiencing due to the slashing of their budget under the Tory government and the difficult decisions that councils are forced to make, which impact on local residents. In the current economic climate, residents are struggling to make ends meet, and the use of food banks since 2010, according to the Trustall Trust, has risen from tens of thousands to the millions. The Tory government's austerity policy was introduced to cut the national debt. However, the Office for National Statistics states the national debt has increased from 1 trillion in 2010 to 1...
Will everybody stop muttering?
Cat Price, can you just carry on, please?
Okay, Chair.
From 1 trillion in 2010 to 1.8 trillion in 2018, which is an increase of 67% of GDP, proving the misery to the millions is inexcusable and unproductive. On top of this, the Tory-led Warwickshire County Council has just declared a 5% overall increase in council tax for all Warwickshire residents for 2019-20, whilst cutting services. Being offered a choice of whether to pay £40 for green bin collection or source alternative, more environmentally friendly methods of disposing of green waste, such as composting, is very welcome, especially to those less well off in the borough.
Thank you, Mrs. Price. Councillor Shepherd, would you wish to reply?
I thank Mrs. Price for her comment.
Right, this is an extraordinary meeting, Council, which has been called following a request from the pursuant paragraph 3.1 of the Council Procedure Rules. Can we have some silence in the public gallery, please? There are three separate motions which I propose to deal with in turn. Can I ask Councillor Wilson, as first signatory, to the requisition to move the third motion, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a season of sickness across the chamber, so if I do go a bit croaky, I do apologise. Really, as a councillor, I shouldn't have to be moving this motion at all. It was my understanding that each and every single one of us as councillors, 34 of us in total, when we decided to accept the office of councillor, we signed effectively a contract, which is the Councillor's Code of Conduct, which says how we will deal with members of the public, other members of the council, officers of the council, and we will do so in a respectful, pleasant, polite manner, even when we disagree with what the other side says. Politics is about disagreement in some areas. It's nice when we can agree, but we don't always agree. However, you don't have to necessarily agree with a resident's point of view to at least treat them with dignity and respect whenever you respond to them. Referring to residents as brain dead is deeply, deeply offensive. And I know of members on this side of the chamber who are all too familiar with the real life consequences of that term. And I know the damage that Councillor Longden has caused to those particular individuals. No doubt there will be other people, members of the council, officers of the council, residents of the borough, who will also have experienced that. And Councillor Longden is responsible for their pain over that. In his initial response, he tried to blow it off as my statement calling for him to resign as bullying. That's what I read on the newspapers. And don't forget, this has gone national. Nuneaton and Bedworth has gone national because an elected member, a cabinet member, has referred to residents as brain dead, as morons, as self-opinionated, and having their brains in their shoes. Not in just one email. He tried to argue it was an exercise where he was at 1:21 in the morning, he was feeling a bit off. But then he was posting in a separate post on Facebook that people are morons and self-opinionated. That isn't a one-off, that is a track record. People who have a track record of denigrating and belittling our residents do not deserve to be holding public office, and especially holding public office in the cabinet when they are responsible for dealing with very, very important issues that affect 130,000 people in this borough. It is irresponsible, it is foolish, and it has caused some real pain and heartache to residents of this borough, some of which are sat behind me tonight. In fact, 2 of them have had to leave the chamber with us because they are so angry and hurt and upset at what you've done. Now, Councillor Longden, I do believe, is actually an honourable person in the long run. And I call upon him to do the right thing and to stand down from the cabinet. Because anyone who says those things does not deserve to be running a department of this council. Those comments were made particularly in regard to people who have had instances, views, opinions on the traveller incursions that we have had. Some of them have been downright racist, some have been off the wall, and those people are wrong. But you do not fight fire with fire and call people brain dead, or people who have actually raised valid concerns and call them brain dead or morons. And you are responsible for that particular area of policy. If people know that you are saying that about people, they can have no faith and no confidence in your actions in dealing with that particular area, which has blighted this borough for years. Only now is this authority starting to take action, despite years of calls from the opposition and from members of the public and others to do something. I would say to members opposite, do the right thing. Actually, I would say to Councillor Longden, first do the right thing so I don't actually have to move this to a vote. If you did, I would actually say, you've done the honourable thing, you've fallen on your sword, let's move on. But to stay in that office is not tenable to me, to this side, or to members of the public. Calling people brain dead isn't the answer. Injunctions is the answer. Public space protection orders is the answer. Putting target hardening in place is the answer. Not calling people brain dead or morons or self-opinionated. Everyone, 130,000 people, have the right to express their views. It's our responsibility to deal with them appropriately and respectfully. So I would say to members opposite, do the right thing if Councillor Longden doesn't fall on his sword, and vote for this motion. Any attempt to amend this motion, abstain or refuse this motion, will be seen quite rightly by members of the public as an attempt to sweep this issue under the carpet, pretend it doesn't exist, and back to business as usual. But it isn't, because how can residents have that faith and trust in the portfolio holder? So I say tonight, in all conscience, do the right thing, stand down and let someone else who can do the job and have the confidence of the residents who pay our allowances, who pay for this council to operate, to have confidence that the person who is discharging that money and that responsibility is doing so fairly and equally and without fear or favour. Do the right thing and vote for this motion or stand down. And I will be calling for a recorded vote on this motion, Mr. Mayor, because people deserve to know how they have voted on this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Does that find a seconder?
Mr Mayor, could I formally second the motion and reserve my right to speak, please? Thank you.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Jackson.
I'd like to raise a point of order, and far from sweeping this matter onto the table, I wish to move the following. I want to raise a point of order under Council Procedure section 4.13.11b, that we move to the next business. As I understand, this matter is subject to an official complaint which will be investigated in accordance with the appropriate standards procedures of this council. And as such, Mr Mayor, I do not believe this should be subject to further debate here tonight. It runs the risk of not allowing the right to a fair consideration, and I so move that we consider the other items on this evening's agenda forthwith.
Can I second that, please, Mr Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Lloyd.
Shame. Yeah.
Right, so we need to move to the vote.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Point of order.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If you read the entirety of 14.13.11b, it states quite clearly that the motion to proceed to the next business is seconded, and the Mayor thinks the item has been significantly discussed. He or she will then give the mover of the original motion a right of reply, and then put the procedural motion to the vote. Mr Mayor, for the public record, can you confirm you believe there has been enough debate?
For public record, Councillor Walmsley, I think that under circumstances, and that there is a formal standards complaint in, and then the standards must deal with what is being asked to deal with. So,
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Has anybody replied to my complaint? No.
Point of order, Councillor Tremens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say, as far as I'm aware, that because an item is coming before standards, it can't be subject to a motion or debate in this chamber. In fact, I'm sure we have debated such issues in the past. So, I mean, this is just clearly, you know, if you want to sit there before the press and the public and say, we are covering up for Council London, we are making sure it's off the hook, then feel free. Otherwise, we have to go to the
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Walmsley has highlighted, the Constitution does specifically relate to there having been sufficient debate on the item. Now, I understand that you may believe this should be appropriately dealt with through standards, but then you should put that argument through debate in this chamber, say that you believe it should go to standards for whatever reason you want to, and then have a vote on the substantive motion, yea or nay. If you vote no, then obviously it will follow whatever process it goes through at standards. But to say that this item has had sufficient debate, when as far as I'm aware, unless the medication I'm on has dulled my senses somewhat, I think I'm the only one who's actually spoken. One speech does not a debate make. And I think
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And like I say, I wouldn't like to prejudice anything on the standards. And I mean, both sides, there would be people on that standards, and I wouldn't want to prejudice anything. And so that's why we won't be debating it any further tonight. It will be debated and heard at the standards.
It's extremely shameful.
Do I not get the right to reply then?
It's a conspiracy. Sorry about that. Should kind of come to the forefront.
So you will have the right to reply.
Show some moral courage.
So do you want the right to reply?
Am I being given the right to reply, or do we have to vote on the motion to move to?
We need to vote on
Or do I do the right to reply then?
No, not right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't say I'm not disappointed. I didn't think I'd be up and down quite this much this early. It is disgraceful the way that this business is being handled tonight. I would even have more respect for the leader, if this is the angle she wishes to pursue, of saying if we are going to wait for standards, suspend him from the Cabinet pending the standards investigation. If you believe that he is innocent, then you can reinstate him to the Cabinet afterwards. And then we can have that debate. I trust that this debate will then be brought back to another council if effectively the motion is for deferring, or we're just rejecting this motion outright now. You are moving to the vote to completely exonerate him. Because your motion, what you have just moved is to move directly to the vote on the motion. You have not moved a motion to defer.
Councillor Lloyd, point of order.
To the last answer, question he threw across, that we're just going to proceed with this and cover it up. It's not being covered up, it's going to standards. When standards have turned around and the outcome is known from that standards committee, then whatever the ruling is from that standards is carried out. Now, what they're saying, it's a disgrace and we're covering it up. No, far from it. I might have to sit on an appeals committee.
I need a point of order. Councillor Conical.
Thank you. I'd like to debate by count, but one thing we have as a point of order is we should have that amendment or motion in writing, please, so we can see what actually we are voting for.
Okay, Councillor Conical, it's a procedural motion, so we won't be having it in writing. Right. So, Councillor Wilson, would you like to finish?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The procedural motion is to move to the vote. So that means we vote yes or no on whether we decide that Councillor Longdon remains as a member of Cabinet. That is what has been moved, is that we move to the vote, not a deferral.
Councillor Wilson, another point of order. Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, I have not said that. I've been very clear that in moving this procedural motion, I do so because it is subject to an official complaint that has to be dealt with appropriately through standards. I believe that is the way we need to proceed with this matter, so it can be looked at without everyone here having heard masses of debate and potentially not a fair procedure.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What the procedural motion on the table does not defer this motion to a future council. Whatever the vote is, whether it be yes or no, decides the outcome of that motion. That's it. It doesn't bring it back after the standards.
Councillor Wilson. Councillor Govey.
I'd like to point to 1412R, and I'd like to propose that we extend the time limit for speeches in order for Councillor Wilson to actually get the point across that he's trying to raise within this non-debate. Thank you.
Right. I haven't stopped Councillor Wilson at any time. Councillor Wilson, would you like to continue with your right to reply?
By this exhibition of charades and smoke and mirrors, we can see the way that the controlling group is trying to go. They're trying to sweep this under the carpet. The court of public opinion, which is ultimately what matters because they are the ones who elected us, they have no faith in the ability of the portfolio holder to discharge his duties fairly and equally, and to deal with residents of this borough in a fair and responsible manner. There was a poll online which showed that over 90% of 400 people who polled, so greater than what we're basing budgets on at the moment, is actually saying that Councillor Longdon should go. Now, Councillor Jackson isn't even trying to cover her tracks on this one. She is not suspending him from Cabinet, pending the outcome of the investigation. At least that would be an honourable thing to do if you're trying to defer this down the road to deal with the...
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Information about the poll that Councillor Wilson was talking about.
There's no such thing as a point of information in our constitution.
Point of order.
It's not a point of order either.
Right, we have some ordering let's not turn this into a circus. Can we not turn this into a circus? Right, can we have some order in here, please? Councillor Golding.
Can I just say that Councillor Tandy turning her microphone on and off like she is doing actually disrupts the recording of the proceedings, and it shouldn't be allowed. I've sat here and watched you do it, and it puts the video in and out. So please stop, because not only are you putting down debate, you're putting down the opportunity for the residents to actually watch this debacle online.
Please sit down and let Councillor Wilson finish his right to reply, please.
I'm actually glad there are so many members of the public in the audience tonight to see the quality of who is controlling this council. No wonder 51% of people voted for this party to run the council and only 35% for those to run over there who are actually controlling, because it is a nonsense what is happening tonight. There is no pretense of standards. We are letting someone get away with calling people brain dead. We are letting someone get away with referring to residents as morons. And we are getting away with letting a portfolio holder, a senior councillor of this authority, of saying that people's brains are in their shoes. Is this a person who is really fit for office? No. So I will vote against the motion to move to a vote and for the motion here.
Councillor Wilson, that's your time. Right, Councillor Jackson, you've...
Mr Mayor, I believe there should be no further debate.
Yeah, no problem with the recording debate. Okay, Simone, over to you, please.
Indicate for or against the motion.
What do we vote?
For the procedural motion, for or against procedural motion that's been put forward.
Which is to what?
To move to the next business.
To what next?
Not
Move to the next business. What next?
This is for or against the procedural motion that's put forward to move to the next business.
Which is?
Which is the next motion on the agenda.
Thank you.
Councillor Beaumont.
Oh, disgraceful.
Councillor Brinley Edwards. Against. Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Croft.
Against.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Gazane.
Against, and stand down.
Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby.
Against.
Councillor Graham.
Against.
Councillor Gutteridge.
Against and shame.
Councillor Hancock. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacourt.
Against.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash.
Against.
Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandare. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
Against.
Councillor J. Sargent.
Against. Shame on you.
Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans.
Against.
Councillor Walmsley.
Against.
Councillor Watkins. Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Okay then, so that's lost.
There is justice after all.
Well done, Michaela.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lord.
I'd like to ask some legal advice, please, on if we continue with the debate on this, then how do we stand if there is an appeal process, and how do the Standards Board's members stand? Because this has been reported to Standards, the correct method that should be adhered to.
Point of order.
Just a minute. I think we're going to need to take an adjournment for 5 minutes. The leader of the Labour group and Conservative group, a bit of legal advice into the parlour, please. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, before we do that, can I have a point of order, please?
All right, okay, sorry. No.
Just save all this, obviously that didn't work, so you can try something else now to wrangle yourself out of it. Instead of hiding behind the...
Mr. Mayor, that's not
no, this is a point of order. No, instead of wasting all time, why don't you stand
Mr. Mayor,
down?
that's
Stand
not a point of
down.
order.
That is a point of order. Stand down.
Councillor Wilson.
Get a set of order and stand down.
Is it? Yeah. We're going to take some legal advice now. We're going to adjourn, and then we're going to come back. So, is it a point of order? Okay.
It might be helpful for all members. I think actually, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Wilson, when putting forward the request for the extraordinary council meeting, did actually take advice from officers on whether these motions were valid and legal and all the rest of it, and it's been accepted. So, if you guys want to take 10 minutes, I don't think you have a problem with that, but I don't think you can come back with a different answer now after Councillor Wilson's already been through that process.
Right, okay, thank you, Councillor Troman. I've already said we're going to take a 5-minute adjournment, and then we're going to come back. Councillor Concord, is it a point of order?
Yes, it is. Any briefing of members should include me, as otherwise I'm the only one of the 33. Or the 34 that doesn't know what it is.
No, sorry, Councillor Concord. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Jackson, to the poll, please. Dave, please up.
All right, please.
What the?
It's difficult to keep quiet, isn't it?
Yes.
All these things go to us. The patience of Jerry.
Standing up is restricted, isn't it?
No, neither do I.
Going further, I think Councillor Longden would like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hold my colleagues over here in very high regard. Hard-working people, and they do their best for the people of this borough. I'm not prepared to sit here and listen to the abuse from the other side, coming right, left and centre. On that basis, as well, Mr. Mayor, in defence of my own future, I suppose, I will not sit in a kangaroo court, and I will now resign my post on the Cabinet in order to get a fair hearing on the Standards Committee, where I hope my comments will then be heard and made public. And that's all I've got to say at this point in time. So as of now, I give my immediate resignation from the Cabinet.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Longden. Councillor Wilson. So, going on your notion now.
What I was going to offer, Mr. Mayor, is having had an honourable response from Councillor Longden, and I do generally outside of this, hold him in quite high esteem outside of this chamber, I will withdraw the motion on the basis that he has done the honourable thing and resigned from the Cabinet. On that basis only, I will withdraw the motion with leave of the Council. I believe it has to have an approval of the Council. Phil's not in. but I thank Councillor Norman for doing the honourable thing and resigning his post on the Cabinet.
Okay. Oh, right, okay. Sorry, seconded that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to formally second the proposal that has been outlined by Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Okay then, so move to the vote on that. So we're voting on Councillor Longden is resigning his position as Cabinet Member. We're voting on withdrawing the motion. Withdrawing the motion by Councillor. So do a show of hands on that, please.
Just a minute. An point of order. It's been withdrawn. You don't need to vote on it.
Thank you.
That's correct. Right, so all those in favour of withdrawing the motion? Against? Abstain? Okay, thank you, that's carried. Right, moving on to the next motion. Can I ask Councillor Wilson, first signatory to the requisition, to move to what was the first motion, please? 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Green bins has been, I think it's fair to say, aside from the borough plan, one of the most contentious issues that councillors have faced in a long time. I know that certainly my inbox has had a number of responses, and I think it's fair to say others, certainly on my side of the chamber, have had that. Let us be clear, it was a decision by the controlling group to implement this charge, and having officers of this council, when people ring up saying all councillors approved it, speak to your councillor, is misleading the public in the extreme, because it is making those of us on this side complicit in a decision we objected to and strongly object to on this side of the chamber. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't be there at Cabinet due to a family wedding, but as I understand it, my deputy leader gave a full-throated response to the proposal, and we have been working quite literally between myself and the officers and Councillor Golby day and night on what we can do to mitigate or reverse the charges for the green bins. That is where all our energy has gone on to, and that will come out in the shadow budget response. But it is negligent of this council for 5 members to approve a policy without having first even considered an equality impact assessment on what it will do. Surely, before you put an item to Cabinet to start charging people for the privilege of having their green bins emptied, you should at least consider the equality impact it will have across this borough. When I spoke to officers before this went to Cabinet, I was informed no assessment had been undertaken. I then subsequently learned afterwards that an assessment was undertaken after Cabinet had made a decision to implement their green bin tax. They had the meeting on the 31st of October. The equality impact assessment, which I have here, is dated 16th of November 2018. Now, unless the portfolio holder has a TARDIS, there is no way that she could have foreseen what this was going to say before voting on it, or even proposing it as the portfolio holder. I think that's a gross dereliction of duty to actually consider what is supposed to be one of the fundamental corporate aims of this authority, which is to reduce inequality within our borough. Now, officers said, although they couldn't quantify this, and I accept that data was hard to get by, but their gut feeling, and I'm having a lot of gut feelings at the moment tonight, is that that there would be some wards which would be disproportionately affected, and it would be logical to assume that those would be areas where there was greater deprivation. So we hear mighty accusations from the party opposite. We've introduced this because of austerity, because we've sent people to food banks, even though it was this government that allowed the DWP to send people to food banks, and the Labour Work and Pension Secretary banned it to allow people to go and get help. They blame everyone else but themselves. Yet we have lost £500,000 on car parking. You spent £200,000 on a climbing tower which hardly anyone has seen and is costing us way too much money. You've spent £2 million on a depot. You have actually subsidised Poundland to the tune of £250,000 a year, but we cannot keep the green bins going. How absurd. And today, I have had further information which I think is quite revealing, because in the Equality Impact Assessment it says, and I quote, "The proposed charge for the collection of green waste will impact on the whole borough equally." Well, let's look at the evidence. Bearing in mind that most wards average around 3,000 properties per ward, we know we have to go and deliver them as councillors. What do you think the take-up actually is for the portfolio holder's own ward? 3,000? 500? 1,000? 226. Wedenbrook, 287, the leader's own seat. Kingswood, 343. Camp Hill, the deputy leader's seat, 356. Barpool, 371. Poplar, 375. The highest proportion, 1140, is my ward in Whitestone. So you can see, just on the basis of that evidence alone, it has disproportionately affected people across this borough. Now, they say that people have been forced into poverty. £40 means the difference between putting food on your table and clothing your kids and paying this bill. That's not equality.
Councillor. Thank you. Does that fall in a second now? Councillor Evans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to formally second the motion which has been proposed by Councillor Wilson, and in doing so, with your permission, I would like to make my speech now. The continuous financial mismanagement of this Labour administration is the very reason why this council has had to implement the green bin tax on residents. A £2 million overspend at Gresham Road, £500,000 lost in parking revenue since 2015, and £200,000 on a climbing wall which is never seen in the borough. But what angers me the most, and what I deem most tragic about this, is your lack of respect for the residents of this borough. How dare you go out there and lie to the electorate? You said that you would, and I quote, protect free garden waste collections. This was on a poster with the headline, "Labour on the side of working people." Since the hard left militant takeover of the Labour Party, since Corbyn's election as party leader, the only people you stand up for are the Islington metropolitan elite and not hard-working taxpayers in communities like ours. And I suspect for that very reason, it's why 64% of the borough voted against having a Labour council in May. A lot of my residents have been absolutely shocked by the lack of communication they have received regarding Labour's green bin tax. The leaflets attached to bins have been disproportionate. Some streets have had 2 over recent weeks, and some streets have had none. And I know that's happened universally across the borough, speaking to some of my colleagues. The leaflets themselves, I think, could have been a lot better. There was a big emphasis on the leaflets about signing up for the scheme via the council's website. That's all well and good, but what about those vulnerable groups in our society who don't have access to the internet? The Office for National Statistics says that 56% of those over the age of 75 don't have access to the internet whatsoever. Although I continually criticise this administration for wasting £30,000 a year on the council's Pravda in Touch magazine, you did put the appropriate funding forward at the budget last year to continue the issue of the magazine. It would have been a perfect opportunity for you to use the In Touch magazine to tell residents about this significant change in this council service. That way, every single resident in the borough would have known about it. In theory, because some streets don't actually get it, but hey-ho. Again, it highlights why the In Touch magazines are a complete waste of time, and I have to question why the Labour administration continues to fund it. Mr Mayor, every week I read the Nuneaton News on a Wednesday. Since the announcement, I have not once seen any sort of A4 infographic in the paper to advertise the change. I do appreciate that it costs money to put advertisements in newspapers, but for such a big change in this council service, it's something that I, to be honest, would have expected to have seen. On the 21st of December, it was reported online that you made a U-turn on the decision not to collect unwanted green bins. In a press release, the council said it will collect unwanted green bins as of March of this year. One of the questions I would like to ask, and I know I'm not allowed to ask questions, but one of the questions I feel the leader of the council really needs to answer in the near future to give greater clarity for residents is whether or not the storage of these unwanted green bins has been considered, and what are you going to do with the unwanted green bins once they're stored?
Not Gresham Road.
Not Gresham Road, no. In conclusion, Mr Mayor, I will be supporting the motion proposed by Councillor Wilson tonight. I think it's wholly unprofessional to conduct an equality impact assessment nearly a month after the decision was made. And for this very reason, it's only right that the appropriate action is taken against the portfolio holder for central services and refuse. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Mr Mayor, I move a point of order. If the opposition had seriously wanted to seek to do this, then it should have called the decision in when it was made. It failed to do so. The Conservatives did not call this in. And it seeks an inappropriate measure to try to change a decision of this council.
Point of order, Mr.
Although this motion...
Councillor Jackson, can we see? Councillor Wilson.
If I heard what Councillor Jackson said correctly at the start, she was moving a point of order. What she's saying is a statement or a speech, and far from a point of order. If she wishes to make a speech, I have no issue about that, but let's call it what it is. It's not a point of order, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Jackson, is it a point of order?
Just a point of order.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Although this motion may accord with the Constitution, as written, I believe it fails to meet the test of lawfulness. Accordingly, Mr Mayor, I do not feel this motion should be discussed. It takes no account of the separate roles of Cabinet and Council. It implies an alteration to the budget which has not been subject to a proper assessment of the financial implications by the Section 151 officer, the head of finance, who, amongst other things, would have to certify that the proposed change maintained a balanced budget, and Council cannot require Cabinet to impose a different fee to that already set. Mr Mayor, I therefore believe we cannot hold discussion on a motion that is unlawful. If the Conservatives believe the decision was wrong, they should have called the matter in. They failed to do so. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Councillor Wilson.
Mr Mayor, could you give some guidance to the council, please? Because I understand that we're having a point of order. A point of order does not move a motion, so there is nothing to second. Now, if we're going to start playing games across the chamber, can we at least play by the same rule book, please, Mr Mayor?
Right. So the way I see it, that wasn't a motion, it was a point of order. But Councillor Jackson, you've calling the legality of the motion put by Councillor Wilson into question.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I believe actually she was calling the question of the legal officer, as this has actually been through the legal officer already, and the head of paid service. So actually she's calling their judgment into question, not ours for raising the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I am not doing that. I started off by saying this motion is in accordance with the Constitution. Mr. Mayor, I am saying
Microphone.
the microphone is actually on.
It doesn't appear to be.
In the gallery. Well, I can only apologise.
Can we have some of the banter and that cut down? Julie, Councillor Jackson, can you move your mic a little bit closer to the mic, please?
Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Okay. What I moved was that I accept this motion that Councillor Wilson approved may be in accordance with the Constitution, but I believe it is unlawful.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Can we have the legal officer define whether this is actually unlawful or not, and if so, can we have an explanation as to why it's been allowed?
On a point of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor, I did actually run all three of the motions tonight past the legal officer, and they were accepted by the head of paid service as valid motions under the Constitution.
Phil, can you take over, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The position is this. Councillor Wilson is quite right. Both the head of paid service and myself have seen the motions, and we did indeed say that they accorded with the Constitution. The Constitution says that there are very specific grounds upon which a motion can be rejected by the head of paid service. Lawfulness isn't one of them. In the context of the discussion that I had with Councillor Wilson, I did point out that there was a specific word which he has retained in the motion, which relates to the relationship between Cabinet and Council, and I think it's to that Councillor Jackson is referring, and it is this. The law specifically discriminates between the role of Council and the role of the Executive, and states that the Council cannot require the Executive to do anything so long as the Executive acts within the budget and policy framework set by Council. In the context of this particular matter, the issue is that the motion is requiring the leader of the Council to do something that the Cabinet have already determined, and therefore it's not something that the Council can require the leaders to do. There is case law which explicitly says that for Council to attempt to do so would be a fetter on the discretion of the Executive to make a proper decision. So in the context of that, the wording require makes it very difficult for me to say that this is a lawful motion, and I think I suggested a different form of words to Councillor Wilson when he came to see me, but obviously the motion is as it is.
Okay, thank you for that, Phil. Right, so on that grounds then, as the wording is unlawful...
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Right, so everybody's shouting out point of order and standing up. I haven't even looked up yet. So, would anybody like to do this properly? Councillor Croft.
Director Richardson has just described something that is unconstitutional. He described it as being out of bounds in terms of the relationship between the Executive and the Council in the Constitution. So why did he not say this when it was put to him beforehand?
Right, is this point of order, Councillor Wilson? Okay.
Well, that's for me to say I need to rule on, Mr. Mayor. But the budgetary motion about green bins hasn't actually been before full council. It is part of the wider budget implications that will come to council in February the 18th, that the council notes all the work which has gone on within the year, adopts it, and any further action which the council may take, and ratifies that as the approved budget. Therefore, this council has not yet set a budgetary framework in respect of whether the green bins is acceptable or not. We started charging for it. The Cabinet have consulted amongst 5 people and, what was it, 227 random people on the streets, but not a full council. It is not a full council decision. It is not going behind a full council decision. Therefore, it would be appropriate to refer it back to Cabinet as part of the budget setting process, so that they can then reconsider and bring, if they wish to, that as a budget recommendation on February the 18th. We're asking them to reconsider as part of the budgetary process.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Wilson. But regardless of anything that's been said, really, the wording in the motion is not lawful, so I cannot accept this tonight.
Mr Mayor, may I interject?
Yes,
could I propose an amendment to the motion then, that we replace the word require with request? I think that would meet your test, would it, Councillor Richardson?
Seconded, Mr Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Right, okay, so an amendment has been put forward. It's been put forward and seconded. And so now we have to move to vote on the amendment.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. If I can say, I can't remember who, it's Councillor Tromans, I believe, moved an amendment. That amendment can only be allowed after a vote of full council, because it is an alteration to a printed motion. I believe that's the case, Mr Mayor.
No wonder why we don't have this confidence in them.
It just plays on words.
Yes, very much so.
Dirty. If it was an issue to raise it beforehand, wasn't allowed to get to the stage, and then put it twice now. On the YouTube. Maybe put recording on YouTube, so actually look at it, share it with as many people as you can, get to watch it.
Right, so now we move to a vote on the amendment.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
So, Councillor Tromans, would you like to repeat your amendment, please?
Right, so Mr Mayor, the motion, my amended motion, is exactly as printed, only instead of the word require, to require the leader of the council, it says to request the leader of the council. So, change one word. Do we need to debate this as well, in which case can I carry on with my speech?
Yeah, everybody can make this
Right, so this is a debate on the amendment.
Great, thank you. We're all on the same page then. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Chronicle, you had your hand up.
I'll just see if we can speak after.
Yeah, I'll just finish my
Right,
speech.
okay, yes. So go on, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Okay, so I mean, part of the reason that we're having to bring this forward is, as has been touched on before, there just isn't the clear communication with the public. There hasn't been the forethought. It's all been done on the hoof. I mean, you know, it transpired that the Cabinet were warned, or certainly members of the controlling group were warned that there was budgetary pressure before the last election. So is it any wonder the public are asking me, as has been asked tonight, you know, kind of, well, what was all of their election leaflets about, saying they were going to protect the green bin service when they already knew it was under pressure? Yeah. And then within days of the election happening, they're instructing officers to come up with this plan to start charging. You know, and this is mid-financial year. So the other thing that people are asking me is, well, how is it cropped up mid-year? What's happened? Did they get their sums wrong?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
moved an amendment and is now speaking to the main proposition that is put on the papers. He either wants to speak on the amendment or he doesn't.
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, I am speaking on the amendment, which is almost identical but for one word to the original motion. So, so the second thing is, you know, I'm being asked to explain, and I can't. You know, is it mismanagement that they can get the budget so wrong it doesn't even last a year? And you know, people want to know what's the cause of the in-year deficit. Is it, you know, other mishaps? Is it other miscalculations? Is it $500,000 that they've lost on?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
You can keep interrupting all you like.
Councillor Pomfret.
As I understand it, the amendment being moved is that they change a word. So I'd like to hear some reasons for changing the word. If Councillor Trowman is speaking to me, thank you.
Please carry on, Rob.
Councillor Trowman.
So, you know, we've heard about the various gaffes and mismanagement, the £200,000 wasted on the climbing wall, 2 million overspent on the depot, $500,000 lost on the car park charges. It's these things happening in year which no doubt have caused this in-year pressure. But the whole point about these kind of things happening is that the council shouldn't be making the mistakes that cause this, and if these things do happen, they should be using reserves in year, not dumping this on the hoof on the population. We have reserves for that very purpose. Or they could consider using the new homes bonus. We get £1.4 million a year from the new homes bonus, and the government says, specifically, it should be used for frontline services. In fact, in their guidance, they even suggest bin collections is being one of the purposes of that money. But no, instead we have this rolled out that people don't understand without consultation, without thinking about the impacts of it, and no wonder the public are up in arms, and rightly so. They should have cushioned the public from this for the financial year and then gone through a proper process. I mean, if we need any more proof that things are being done on the hoof by a group that has lost control, then we only have to look at the U-turns. We only have to look at the, oh, you've got to keep hold of your green bin, and then as soon as they come under pressure, they say, okay, well, we'll gather the green bins back in. But we don't know how we'll do that. We're not exactly sure when, and we don't know what we'll do with them if we do bring them back. And we certainly haven't budgeted for the cost.
Councillor Trowman, can you just stick to the notes of the motion?
So, I'm sorry, I am going to support this motion because residents rightly are up in arms. You've not dealt with this well. You've not dealt with it as a prudent council would. It's showing that you're in disarray and just making stuff up mid-year on the hoof, and I will be supporting this.
Councillor Pomfret, would you like to come back on that? And then I've got other speakers.
We're speaking on the amendment. Yes. I haven't heard one single reason, presumably because there aren't any, why we should accept this amendment. So I'm not going to vote, obviously, in favour of the amendment when Councillor Trowman has spoken for however many minutes it is, and he hasn't come up with one single reason. And he's the guy who proposed that it was so important to change this one word. But he hasn't told us what the reason is.
Point of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor, if I might just explain. I thought I didn't need to say, as it had just been explained by the director, that the reason the word had to change is because the word require was too strong and could be deemed to be giving an instruction which is illegal or unconstitutional or whatever. So rather than have that, we clarified it with the word request. So that was already explained. I didn't think I needed to repeat it, but I
Okay,
just have
thank you,
now.
Councillor Trowman.
Thank
Right,
you.
I'm going to try and say this again, because it obviously ain't getting over. Everybody just keeps jumping up. I don't want everybody just keep jumping up and then pressing the switch when they're up. I've got a list of speakers, so if you can just try and get through tonight's business, I'd appreciate it all. Councillor Walmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hadn't quite expected to be called so early. So the motion, as Councillor Trowman has just put down, actually results in requests that the leader in the council portfolio holder produce an amendment to the policy to protect the most vulnerable residents in our community. And I hope to offer them a negative of assistance in how they could perhaps do this. Given that what we could do is to protect the most vulnerable, we could actually protect all residents at the same time. Quite clearly, as Councillor Trowman has already alluded to, we have the New Homes Bonus total pot for 1920, £1.4 million, that at the moment is not ring-fenced, it can be used in any way. Other councils around the area use it to protect frontline services, which is what we could do with this frontline service and protecting the most vulnerable residents at the same time. And we could use some of that towards plugging the gap for the green bins. In fact, as Councillor Trowman has already alluded, the New Homes Bonus, the document sets out by the government page 3, paragraph 7 states, for example, they may, and I quote, for example, they may wish to offer council tax discounts to local residents, support frontline services like bin collections, or improve local facilities like playgrounds and parks. And actually, what we could do is we can free up some money from this immediately if the Cabinet wished to do so, seeing as they are taking other adjustments in year at the moment, that could immediately protect the most vulnerable in our society, to have to pay no charge at all. In fact, it could actually allow anybody in our society, in our council and our authority, to not have to pay any charge at all, and would be completely permissible. We see neighbouring councils, the West Midlands councils, Walsall, Solihull, Rugby and Bath have all used 100% of their New Homes Bonus to date, protecting frontline services. And that has meant for some councils, actually it's an extra £20 million since 2011. By comparison, here in Nuneaton and Bedworth, which are much smaller than the large authorities of Walsall and Solihull, for example, much smaller, but we've actually received 10 million, and actually we've not used a penny of that in protecting our frontline services. So I think what we could do today, very clearly, and hopefully this is a helpful suggestion to Cabinet, that we can go ahead, we can push forward, we can resolve and support this motion, and there is an easy, simple way out for them right here, right now, or the next Cabinet meeting, where they could decide to change the policy, to fund the policy completely, protecting the most vulnerable residents in our society, as well as every resident from having to pay this charge. This is, to be clear, a choice, not a necessity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Walmsley. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taxes, they're distress situations, distress purchases if you like. They're unpopular by their nature. But when you're managing something, you often have to make unpopular decisions for the right reasons. Well, given what you've done with the borough plan, Gresham Road, the other things we've heard about, I think it's pretty certain to say you've got unpopular nailed right down, guys. But as far as doing the right thing goes, I don't think this really hits the mark. Certainly not with our residents. As already been said, I've heard from more residents about this than I have about anything apart from the borough plan. And the majority of people that have contacted me have come from Kersley. You know, one of the areas with the lowest take-up of this green bin tax payment. And funny enough, everybody that's contacted me has been against it. Not a single person said, great idea, why aren't we doing this before? We've heard about how it's been made up on the hook. We've heard about how there was no proper impact assessment. I just wonder, people have told me about the fact that they suspect that it's going to be dumped in ditches and verges around the area. Some people are planning on taking it to the tip. People are thinking about sharing, that type of thing. But when people take it to the tip, did you factor in the extra cost of business with congestion, the extra pollution that's going to be on the roads because of this? We're going to have thousands of residents potentially going to the tip, whereas we have a few lorries going around collecting it more efficiently. All because you've chosen to introduce this tax when you had other choices available to you. And it just looks to residents like it's another decision, like many of the borough plan decisions that seem to be carried out behind closed doors, in secret, no proper consultation. We thought you'd learn from the borough plan to consult properly. It just seems you're not getting the message, folks. So I'm just wondering, we've seen little flyers that have been attached to bins instead of proper communication. You see them laying in the wet ground where people haven't picked them up because they've dissolved before they've got off the bins. So it's just the communication's been appalling. The decision's a bad decision. You have the chance to change that decision. At the last council meeting in December, I asked the portfolio holder for the dates of the meetings when this idea first came about, because it was suspiciously close to the election when literature was delivered promising that you wouldn't introduce this charge. The portfolio holder said she'd write to me with the dates. So when I didn't hear anything, I contacted by email. The answer I got back was, I can't remember. I asked her to go back to officers and confirm from their diaries when those dates might have been. I'm still waiting for a response. All of this sort of gives the appearance that the portfolio here was complicit in doing this bad decision, or incompetent. Now, I wouldn't suggest for any minute that she's complicit or dishonest in any single way, but I think the residents of this borough have made their minds up on the sheer incompetence. Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, I've still got a number of speakers on here. Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's nice to talk on policy as opposed to procedure this evening. I'm very happy to speak in favour of this motion and against this policy. Firstly, because this charge from the Labour Group, which is effectively a tax on green bins, is such a fundamentally regressive policy. Now, there are some parts of the town and some residents who can afford it and can pay it, and they won't like doing it, but they will. But if you're struggling and you have to pay the rent, or if you're on a fixed income, or if you're not sure that you're going to be in work, or if you need to make sure that you can cover the next food bill, or if you need to find money to pay the school uniforms, if you need to pay the heating and utility bills, then 40 quid lump sum is nothing to be sniffed at. Now, those people on fixed incomes or limited means with tight budgets will then have to make a choice. Do they stump up the extra cash when they're already hard up against it, or will they give up their green bin? And that's what the council seems to expect, since the report, when it went to Cabinet, said that only about 37.5% of people would take this up. What sort of policy is that? It's a policy effectively designed to be regressive, to price out the poor and the squeezed middle, and out of a service that the affluent parts of town will continue to enjoy. And this is from the party that tells us that it is the party of the underprivileged and the needy and the poor. And it is the Labour Party that is now putting a greater burden on the backs of the people and the people who can afford it least. And we've discovered that they were planning for it from quite some time back, even when they were promising not to do it in the election. That's a Nick Clegg policy. As I've said before on another occasion, the council is acting like it is not on people's side. And it's all very well to say, as the portfolio holder did, that the service is opt-in and that you don't have to use it, it's discretionary. But what about the pensioner who happens to enjoy gardening, who's on a fixed income? What about the young family who have to put more into the black bin because children make a lot of mess, and then they need to use the green bin for the food waste? What about them? And alarmingly little thought seems to be given to this, Mr. Mayor. The equality impact assessment of this policy was not done when the policy was approved by Cabinet, and when it was laughable. I mean, the assessment says that it will impact on the whole borough equally. Mr. Mayor, that is a ridiculous statement. How can it do that when it is the most deprived areas that will lose out most of this service? Then there's the financial implications. There's been very little in the way of economic modelling on why it should be £40. It seems to just serve to bring the Neaton Bedworth into line with rugby, but the social, demographic and economic conditions in this borough are very different. So if the estimated 37% take-up is wrong, and I expect it will be, then that throws out the whole budget estimates. And next year we've got to find more cuts, so we've got to find more charges. And who is that going to impact the most? The poor and the needy. So little consideration seems to have been given to the basic economic principle that if you charge more for something, less people will take it up. So Mr. Mayor, once again the issue is whether this council is on the people's side and on the side of residents, so I urge the council to pass the amended motion tonight and place themselves firmly on the side of the people.
Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a keen environmentalist, I was really disturbed when this green bin charge was first suggested. But all this talk about protecting the most vulnerable residents don't use green bins. They live in flats, shelters. They don't have lawn gardens.
Can we have some order in here, please? Councillor Elliott.
The universal credit cannot stretch to nowhere. They're not being enforced.
Councillor Elliott, take a statement, please. Is this a point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask Councillor Elliott, would she be happy to go to some of my residents and say that to their faces?
That's not a point of order. But can we keep it? Points of order. You've all had the training, you all know, it's all right in the book, so points of order. Councillor Elliott, please.
These residents are not being forced to pay £40 for a green bin. It is not a green bin tax. It's an opt-in. We funded it previously because we had adequate funding. Now we don't. So is it fair that the vulnerable residents subsidise those more affluent residents who can perfectly happily afford £40 a year, as the leader of the opposition own evidence shows? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I'm going to take a few more speakers, and then we're going to go to vote. Councillor Wilson, are you indicating that you want to speak? All right, okay. I won't be taking any more speakers. I've got some here. Yeah, you get the right to speak, but I'm not taking loads more speakers. So I'm just going to take a few more that I've got here, and then we move into vote. Councillor Gustain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was under the assumption until recently that everyone knew about this, until speaking on social media and asking what people thought of the charge, just to kind of get a grasp of who was paying for it. And then all of a sudden I was inundated with calls and messages asking what charge. Because again, it hasn't been communicated properly. We've seen In Touch magazines go out when it suits the controlling group's agenda, but on important items that need to go out to the public, every single resident, there's nothing again. So why haven't we told residents? Why is there nothing on in the paper? I don't know a single person that knew about this apart from my colleagues. I called family to ask if they knew. I wondered if we just missed it in Galley Comet if we hadn't had it in touch. They didn't know either. It was news to them. So I'd like to know what we can put in touch out, but it's just literally may as well be called the Labour newspaper or the Labour magazine. But we've got a duty to reduce waste and try and reduce waste, and the next generation and our generation need to do every single thing we can, which the government's doing, everyone's trying to do, schools are encouraging it. So what we're telling everyone is now, you can now choose if you're not well off, and it's not just people living in flats, it's people on low incomes, people living in council properties, housing association properties. You can choose what for some people could be a week's shopping bill, or paying a utility bill, or paying a bus pass, or something that you need desperately. Or you can recycle your green waste. And what we have seen everywhere, I see it every single day when I go from Galley Common down to Bedworth and down Astley Lane, is fly tipping. Fly tipping is everywhere. What do you think is going to happen with this green waste? People are going to chuck it somewhere, they might dump it down the road, they might dump it in a field near the house, might chuck it in a flat bin. Exactly. What do you expect people to do with it? And also, why should residents foot the bill? Because of your lack of action dealing with fly tippers. If you've overspent your budget because we have had problems with fly tipping and travellers, and we're wasting money that we could have spent on trying to prevent these things from happening, and dealing with them, all we're doing is reactive. We're not doing anything to take preventative measures. We're just wasting money. We're running out because we've got issues everywhere. They crop up every couple of months, every single place.
Councillor Gadsden, this is
I
just want to speak on the motion.
Why on earth has this council ran out of money all of a sudden, we're charging residents for something because the council has wasted its money again? You can't run a budget. But again, you'll blame the government, you'll blame someone else, anyone. You've got the same excuses.
I've got to ask you to stick to the motion, please.
Okay, I would like to know as well, after the council did the U-turn and said, right, we'll collect green bins if you don't want them. So how much will that cost? Have we thought about that if there is a low uptake? What are we going to do with those green bins? I know
Councillor, I'm not saying that these are invalid questions, I'm just saying that they're not on the motion.
But if it isn't one part of the motion, the residents need to know.
Like I say, valid questions that can be asked of officers. So, we've just, on the motion.
Okay, on the motion, when the Cabinet, if we do ask the Cabinet to reconsider this, please do reconsider what's going to happen if all these green bins go somewhere. Can we sell them? Can we reuse them? Are we just going to burn them? Just think about that.
Okay.
That's more money.
Thank you, Councillor Casane. I'm going to take Councillor Jackson now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion has come about tonight because the Conservatives failed to call this in. They truly do believe this decision was wrong. They had every opportunity to call this decision in, and they failed to do so. Is that because actually they agree with it, contrary to what they're saying tonight? This amended motion...
Can we stop the goings on in the public gallery, please? Can't have it. Right. Honestly, can't have this. Fair enough, but I can't have it in the public gallery. Okay, we've tried to get some business done. So, yeah, if it does carry on, then we'll have to ask the public to leave. Okay, and I don't want that to happen. Councillor Jackson, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, most importantly, what has been put forward in the amendment is not costing. It hasn't, to my knowledge, been signed off by the Section 151 officer because there are budget implications here. There have been some suggested ways in which we may vary the budget, but nothing concrete. All Cabinet meetings, unless containing confidential information, are held in public. I need to say that because there's been a suggestion that meetings are not always held in public. They are only held in private if there are confidential issues. A choice has been given to people about whether they wish to pay £40. Mr. Mayor, an alternative could have been to cease this service completely. The Labour administration decided that we would give a choice to people. I will remind the Conservatives that at their last budget meeting, their last budget proposals included privatising services of this council. And I have to respond to Councillor Gizane, I think it was, apologies to him if it wasn't, but councillors who have said we are not able to run balanced budgets, we have poor budgeting skills. That is not the opinion of the auditors of this council who say our figures add up and we have a sustainable budget going forward. I need to correct those statements, Mr. Mayor. They weren't actually part of the motion, but they've been said here, and I believe we have a right of reply on those. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor Jackson. I'm going to move to Councillor.
I've indicated twice to speak, including
I'm going to move to Councillor Wilson now for the right to reply. Then
I'm sorry, Mr.
I know you indicated, Councillor Connicor. I know you indicated
to speak.
I know you
I would like to speak
Councillor
when
Wilson.
I have yelled at officers after a meeting because
Councillor Connicor. Councillor Connicor. I know you indicated to speak, but I think there's been enough discussion.
Why is every
Councillor Connicor.
Why don't you want me to speak?
Councillor Wilson.
It takes to listen to me.
Councillor
You should watch
Councillor
and let people speak.
Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Watkins, this is not the first council meeting that you have stopped Keith speaking. Why is it every time Keith wants to speak?
No,
it's not difficult.
You're out of order. Would you
You're
like
out
to do
of
your
order and not
part,
allowing
please?
him to speak. You are out of order. He was before that gentleman.
He was, absolutely.
I've been
Well, not
watching
that I
this
see.
man going on.
Not that I see. I'm not getting into discussion about it. I'm not getting into discussion about it.
Every time.
Enough discussion.
You stop speaking.
I'm not allowed to speak.
I think there's been enough discussion.
I indicate.
Councillor Concord, can you leave the chamber? No.
I want to speak.
Listen.
We need a new chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
I propose we vote for a new chairman. This is getting out of order.
If it was just one occasion, but it's every time I've come to a meeting, you say, oh, we'll stop the debate every time when it's just about for Councillor Kandaka to speak. And it's ridiculous.
You are not conducting this meeting correctly. I'm sorry,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, but that is the truth.
As the mayor now, I'm now going to ask that the member no further be heard. And could I have a seconder for that motion, and then that will be voted on without discussion. If the motion is carried, the named member may not speak further at the meeting.
With respect, nobody votes on that.
Can I have a seconder?
With respect, no seconder on that one. You're out of order.
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, for God's sake. Not him again.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Bloody hell. Thought we'd got rid of him.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. To be fair, I did see Councillor Comscore indicate.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. That is correct.
To be clear, I disagree with the tantrum we just experienced, but to be fair to the councillor, he did indicate.
What, possibly?
And I don't defend him by any stretch of the imagination.
Councillor Wilson, you possibly did, but I didn't say it.
Well, then you need to look.
I've put something forward, it's been seconded.
This is painful. I don't believe this. Never been to a meeting like it.
So,
and God hope I never go to another one.
Councillor Wilson. Right, so I've put something forward. It's been seconded by Councillor Longden. Going to move to the vote that the member not be heard. So all those in favour that the member not be heard.
Move the recorded vote.
This is about the member not being
Okay.
It's about banning speaking 5 minutes, like every other member is allowed to.
6, 7. Right. Make sure it's a fair vote.
Go on, against.
I counted 8. Come on, get on with it.
Come on, get on with it.
just on this item, I'll give Councillor Concord 3 minutes to do his speech, and then we're moving to the vote. So Councillor Wilson will have his right to reply, then we're moving to vote.
Thank you.
And I'm not
Thank you.
Thank you very much and good evening everyone. I think it's important that we request the Cabinet member to reconsider the bin charges, particularly on these less vulnerable people. Asking for £40 right at the beginning of the year, in January, is a dreadful thing to do. And when we considered this at Cabinet, there was very little debate. There wasn't alternatives. And one of the fundamental things we need to do when we take a decision is to think long and hard about the alternatives, and if we do need to charge for garden waste, what the right charge is. Because I understand the pressures the council is under. I understand it's lost £1.3 million of revenue support grant, and the council is expected to work a lot harder. If we look at the issue, the green waste bins cost around £700,000 to collect. And we have 35,000 people using the service. That is £20 for everyone using the service. And so if the council had difficulty balancing the budget, my first thing would be, what would happen if we charge people £20?
Councillor Condon, come on. You've got your 3 minutes. This is to speak on the motion that is put in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, £20 would have far less impact on the vulnerable, and the motion is looking about vulnerable residents. And so actually moderating the charge to £20 is one of the things that we should have looked at the start, and if we can, we shouldn't look for the vulnerable residents, or hopefully all residents, actually charging £20, which is what the service costs. To actually expect people to pay a premium, i.e. £40 for a £20 service, is a benefit to the council and a disbenefit for the less vulnerable. So I really think we should have had a proper debate right at the beginning, and particularly considering the vulnerable people, the people who are in bungalows, barely managing to scrape ends meet, don't have a car but have a large garden. What are we doing for those? When Hinkley introduced their charge, and they did have to introduce a charge, they introduced a £24 charge. And they spent £200,000.
Councillor Concord, this is on the motion. I'm not interested in what Hinkley's done. This is on the motion that's in front of you.
How many times do you interrupt the Labour members? Can I carry on? A £24 charge, they spent £200,000 to get it right. And their scheme is very successful. We are failing to do. A carpenter measures twice and cuts once. We just cut on a guess with this. £40 is stupid. We talk about how this decision came about. The Cabinet has informal Cabinet meetings. There are meetings where things are talked about, like this green waste charge, informally, and these meetings happen once a month in private. And this is where this charge got set. And this is where we have failed. And I understand why Labour want to make the charge. I understand the trouble with the vulnerable, and I understand the people barely making their council tax payments. But when we look at other items, this money is not being reinvested in something like cutting down liability orders, cutting down minimum council tax payments. Where is this money going? It is going into many of the council's own mistakes. I think I'll leave it there before you interrupt me again.
Thank you. Well done, Keith. Well said.
Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just move a suspension of standing orders to enable business to be conducted? I think we're at 15 minutes before cut-off point. In responding to the debate, no, we didn't call it in because we knew what we were going to get. You were going to overturn it. And we have focused our efforts, considerable efforts actually, in our budget proposals, which will be revealed in the next few weeks, at actually stopping the damage that you are causing to the most vulnerable in our society. You talk the talk about protecting the vulnerable. It is this side that walks the walk in protecting the vulnerable. And I won't take any lessons from the other side, because in my job, I really do see the vulnerable, and I know what goes on. So don't try and paint me out to be one of these Tories who doesn't care, because there are more champagne socialists on that side, and more caring and compassionate Conservatives on this side than others give credit for. Now, privatisation. I think it's laughable that the leader of the council comes up with that when, under the guise of externalising, she has already externalised the climbing tower, so we're now tied into that, and she is externalising, possibly, the town centres. Now, Councillor Elliott is the gift that keeps on giving. We've had reserves of earthquakes, we've had mortgages are only the aspiration of the privileged. Now we have that the green bin tax won't affect the most vulnerable because most of the people aren't vulnerable in our society. Well, tell that to the people who are amongst the top.
Point of personal explanation, please.
Tell that to the people who are actually living in wards, living in houses, who are amongst the most top 10% in the country of the most deprived at all. Go and say that to the people on the streets of her ward in Barpool, where only 371 have taken it up. Is she saying that the other 3,700 are all well off, that they can afford £40 a month? That's a ridiculous claim to make from someone who is supposed to represent those residents. It might be all right that £40 can be paid from someone who lives on, say, Lutterworth Road or the Watling Street, but people who live on the Circle, on Tompkinson Road, in the Slough, in Abbey, £40 means the difference between putting food on the table, whether they can feed their children, whether they can actually put electricity in the meter, whether they can actually send their kids to school with a cooked meal. That's the difference, but the party opposite can't even get that right. They berate people, they try and trap people in a cycle of dependency, but when people actually try and do something to help those in most need, what do? They tax them. It's the typical Labour response. If it moves, tax it. If it breathes, tax it. And if it doesn't move, we'll tax it again. Now, this is a damning indictment of your policy. And I hope you get the same figures that I do, because I've asked for them. It makes very interesting reading. Because we only have, against your forecast of 37% of people who will take up this charge, as of midnight, 26.5% of people have taken up your charge, have actually paid your tax, out of the 35,000 people who currently are supposed to be doing it. Now, that is a real slash in the cut to services when you haven't looked, as we have, line by line through each single piece of expenditure of this council. You are happy to pay out £800,000 for a civic hall, but charge residents 40 quid to have their green bins emptied. You are happy for residents to fork out £200,000 for a climbing tower no one uses, rather than allow people to use their green bins. You would rather hit everyone, because it is more or less a universal service, than actually look line by line at every single discretionary service we offer and protect the interests of residents. You have sacrificed residents and hidden behind poverty of this council, when it is this council which, if it had made proper financial decisions in the past, would be far better off in dealing with the issues we face now. You refused to even talk to large companies who wanted to come into our town, didn't even respond to a letter. If they had come here instead of going to North Warwickshire, they could have been paying hundreds of thousands of pounds in business rates. Instead, you sacrificed that because you couldn't respond, wouldn't pay a stamp to return the letter, and instead that business went elsewhere. If that business had come in, we might not have been paying this charge now. It's decisions like that which prove you are for the few and not the many. It is Labour who run down these services because it is their interest to blame it on everyone else. I support the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Hold on, I've got, is yours point of order? Okay.
I don't want to prolong it any longer than necessary, but during his tirade, Councillor Wilson actually said we're charging £40 a week. Sorry. And therefore people can't put food on the table and all that rest of it. It's not, I'm not paying £40 a week, I'm not paying £40 a month, I'm paying £40 a year, about 80 pence. Now, whether that was a slip of the tongue or what, I don't know, but it's on the tape and it needs to be challenged because it'll go out there as being factual, and it's not factual at all. And as far as putting food on the table, that party over there, good God, how many more millions of people do you want to go food
Hold on, I've got another punch of explanation to take first. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think the other side understand what a most vulnerable resident is, but to quote made up accounts on social media, to quote things that they've said and attribute them to a Labour councillor is just ridiculous.
What? What are you talking about?
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I did say what Councillor Longman says, I can't honestly remember. I do apologise, it was in the heat of the moment, but the point remains, it is a one-off charge that people have to pay at once, so it would affect their weekly or monthly budget all at once. If I said it was £40 a week, I do apologise, slip of the tongue, things happen, debates get heated.
Right, okay, thank you. So, now we're going to move to a vote on the amendment. So this is the amendment that Councillor Troman's put forward.
What? Are we only there?
I don't think we're there yet.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. In line with the Constitution, I'd like to call for a recorded vote. This vote. On another point of order as well.
I am going to ask for more training again after tonight's meeting because these are not points of orders.
I think he needs it.
Yeah, he's going to need it.
Councillor Wilson, in line with the Constitution, did propose that we suspend standing orders in order for the meeting to go on longer than 3 hours. That didn't formally get a second. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, I've not got to that yet. I just want to get this one over, and then I'll go on to the next piece, which is the piece I was going to say next is that we vote to extend the meeting to conclude tonight's business. So, right. So, we've now got a recorded vote on the amendment.
Okay, if you could indicate for or against the amendment. Councillor Beaumont.
Against.
Councillor Brinley Edwards. For. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin.
Against.
Councillor Doty.
Against.
Councillor Elliott. Against. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Kazane.
For.
Councillor Gass.
Against.
Councillor Golby. For. Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Gooderidge.
For.
Councillor Hancox.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacore.
For.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. For. Councillor Lloyd.
Against.
Councillor Longdon.
Against.
Councillor Pandair.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Pomfret.
Against.
Councillor Woodkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
For.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans.
For.
Councillor Walmsley.
For.
Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
Okay, so I use my casting vote on against. So, that amendment. Okay. Right, so now we're going to have to move on to a vote to extend to tonight's meeting to conclude tonight's business. Right, so the reason that I'm not having a vote on the actual motion is because it was illegal because of the wording of it. So, is that clear for everybody? Okay, right. So now I need to vote on extending the meeting to get tonight's business concluded tonight. So do I, until it's done, so do I get a seconder to extend tonight's meeting? All those in favour of extending tonight's meeting? Okay, against? Abstain. Okay, thank you. That's so we're extending tonight's meeting. I'm going to ask if anybody wants to come for a break before we go on to the next motion. Does anybody want a 5-minute, 10-minute comfort break, and then we'll go on to the next motion? Okay, thank you. No, I'll read it.
I get told off when I shout the offers afterwards.
Well, if it was the one that Elson's taking time. Oh, I need to turn this off.
True to the requisition to move the third motion, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I thought it was very telling, actually, in moving this motion that we had. And I've heard some of Mrs. Wilson's speeches in the past when she used to be on these benches, and I have to say, one of the best speeches I've ever heard her give, actually, with great passion and enthusiasm for our town centres. We haven't always agreed, but on this one, I think we are at one on wanting to preserve, protect and enhance our markets and our town centres. Now, unfortunately, over the Christmas period, our town centres took a bit of a hammering in terms of their reputation, particularly in terms of cancelling the Christmas markets on on Christmas Eve. And also there is some disquiet amongst traders about what the plans to, and this is Labour's wording, not mine, externalise, so for externalise, read privatise, the markets. It may or may not be a good thing, but what is causing concern is the uncertainty about what that entails. Is it going to be given to the market traders to run? I know there are some market traders who are interested in that. Is it going to be put out to tender for some market operator to come in? I've been down to Stratford not too long ago and seen some of the work that private companies do there, and actually they were well attended and run. And it was a nice, pleasant surprise to go and see that. This council needs to clarify, and clarify quickly, what it intends to do with our markets, especially given the Transforming the Neaton package which is coming forward, which does enjoy cross-party support. But throughout all the Transforming the Neaton package, the markets are going to be essential in actually keeping that interest and that life going in our town centres, while the town centres are regenerated. And we need that certainty quickly, not just from a point of view of actually what our markets will look like in the future, but also in terms of financial certainty. Because we've just been given an arbitrary figure of £20,000 worth of savings by externalising, but no definition as to what that is going to include. Maybe a cabinet paper coming back later at some stage is what I was told in the meeting with the senior officers. Maybe. And shutting the town market down on what could have been one of the busiest days of the year for a market trader on Christmas Eve was a disaster. Because market traders actually wanted to come in, but they weren't offered the option of coming in at normal rates. It had to be at overtime rates. Now, I spoke to the head of paid service about this, and I don't even think the head of paid service quite understands some of the arcane rules and things which went back years, but apparently there are arcane agreements, contracts, ways of working which enable the council to move around days and effectively class them as bank holiday days for the council. But the reasons why have seemed to fall into antiquity. But we are working on perhaps 1950s, 1960s rules when we should be looking at a 21st century operation. And working in the public sector myself, and I know people who work in the private sector, Christmas Eve does not have to be a shutdown day at all. In fact, I think we would have had a great bonus to the town centres if we had allowed those market traders to go ahead, and if there was some wrangling over whether we put out the markets on that day and having to charge double bubble to the market traders, why didn't we offer the workers the option of coming in for normal time and then having time off in lieu on another day? That would have been a perfectly acceptable, reasonable business practice. But for whatever reason, through the midst of time, arcane practices are being allowed to continue in this authority, and I hope moving forward the leader of the council, who I believe is her portfolio for markets and all that, will look at, and overall head of responsibility for the council will look at dragging some of our arcane employment practices back into the 21st century. Because our residents expect a 21st century service, not something which drags back to old local government rules dating back from the 50s and 60s, and perhaps even further back. Now, some market traders actually use those days before Christmas like a bit of a whale would, getting a bit of blubber in so that they can see themselves through the lean times. Because January is quite often a period where, because we've had Christmas, because people have spent money and they're having to rebuild their finances, get a bit of security, find the money to pay the green bin tax, they can't afford to go out and buy as much as they used to on the markets. And that bit of flexibility the market traders will have built up for themselves in those times is essential to them. We have cut that off for market traders, people who are proud to come to Nuneaton and Bedworth, say they are market traders in Nuneaton and Bedworth, give you that banter across the tables. We need to actually support our town centres. This cannot continue, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Does that have a seconder? Councillor Evans, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I would like to formally second the motion which has just been proposed by Councillor Wilson, and in doing so I would like to make my speech now. Despite the clear message sent to the Labour administration by the electorate in May, by the people of Bedworth, we still haven't seen any major improvements or plans to improve Bedworth town centre. 54% of Bedworth residents who voted in that election voted for a Conservative manifesto that promised to relocate Bedworth Market back into the heart of our community and our town centre in All Saints Square. Despite the message sent by electorate, I have seen nothing from this Labour administration. It shows they lack ambition, aspiration and a vision for our town centres in the borough. When myself and other Bedworth councillors alongside Craig Tracy MP met with owners of small businesses in Bedworth, the one thing that was continually raised was the image of Bedworth town centre, in particular All Saints Square. There was not one single business owner who spoke against the market being moved back outside. Having the market back outside in All Saints Square would make the town centre look more vibrant. I think we have a really fantastic, unique opportunity in Bedworth. A market in All Saints Square, overlooked by the almshouses and the church, would really reinstate the feeling that Bedworth is a traditional market town. And let me highlight some of the conspiracy theories that it's not feasible or possible to put the market back into All Saints Square. Every Christmas, for the lights switch on, we have numerous charity stalls which are set up by the council and have access to electricity. Secondly, the market was temporarily relocated to...
I need you to talk on the motion that's in front. So this is about externalising, and then the 24th of December. Sorry, but I'm going to get this done tonight.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'm aware, as the seconder of this motion, that the first sentence is, this council expresses its concern that the Labour administration appears to have no vision for our town centres. I'm speaking about why I believe this Labour administration has no vision for our town centres, in which case I will carry on. So it is possible to relocate.
No. So it either goes on the externalising or on the 24th.
In which case, Mr Mayor, I have come to the opinion that I do not believe that this council meeting this evening is being done fairly. And in principle, I will stop speaking because I'm not speaking in a full council meeting, which is not being done fairly. You would not get this. You would not have that against Labour members. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Jackson.
Mr Mayor, I will come to an amendment to this. Labour's vision for our town markets is already being implemented, with Bedworth seeing new external graphics and a major clean-up to improve its appearance, and with the old stores being replaced with pop-up stores to increase its flexibility and capacity. And yes, we have undertaken a staff restructure, creating a senior commercial operations post tasked with driving revenue through sourcing new traders for both of our markets and looking at opportunities for niche markets too. I could go on, Mr Mayor, but quite rightly you would hold me to the 3 minutes I have, and I need to use my time effectively. Nuneaton Market is a gem in our town centre, and one I will support, along with the market in Bedworth too. I share Mrs Wilson's views in that regard. Mr Mayor, I wish to move the following amendment, copies of which are available. I so move, Mr Mayor, that the first sentence and part of the second sentence is removed, so that the amendment reads, this council resolves that Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 will be a normal working day of this council. It's always going to be in any event, Mr Mayor.
So thank you, Councillor Johnson. Does that get a seconder?
Mr Mayor, I'll second that, and I'm going to say no more.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Lloyd.
given that we're not that far apart as two groups on this, we all want the best for our markets in our town centres. Next year, this year's market on Christmas Eve is going ahead.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Can I move the vote?
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Right, that's been moved and seconded. Councillor Colby.
Councillor Lloyd said that he wasn't actually going to speak again, and he's just spoken again. We haven't had any reasonable debate on any of the amendments or the main motion.
Mr Mayor, I'll say it again, I'll move the vote.
Can I call for a recording vote?
Yeah, you can call. I'm going to listen to Councillor Concord and then we'll go for a recording vote.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I've been to the Neat Market probably for most of my 53 years on this earth at Christmas Eve. It is really, really important, the market. And I was contacted by residents, particularly one who'd actually tried to trade on the market just before Christmas. And he was told by this council that the council wasn't taking any bookings for the Neat Market for the 4 weeks before Christmas. The council has got an attitude that if it's awkward, it will try not to do it. Which is why I welcome a focus, hopefully by the Labour and the Tory groups, on getting the market having a more commercial idea of how it's run. We had Alan Otti, an award-winning market manager, a town centre manager, do so much to actually try and grow the market. We won awards in 2008-9 periods, and I would really love us to get back to those days. And I do hope in changing this motion, or passing the Tory motion, we actually have a working group on which I and other keen people are allowed to take part to support our wonderful market. Because when we start demolishing parts of the co-op, when we start demolishing parts of Vicarage Street, we are going to damage trade in town. And it's going to be all hoardings, and the market's going to take yet another hit. During that period, we need our new market solution to be cheap, so we get as many traders in as possible, well advertised, and we need the market to effectively be our lifeboat until we actually get through to the other side.
Right, thank you.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. I actually have 2 points of order, which I'm hoping you can clarify. One, are you stating that this does not alter or negate the original motion? Is that your ruling as Mayor? Okay. And are you also ruling that there has been sufficient debate on this item? Because sufficient debate has to take place, in the Mayor's opinion, before you can move to the vote. Again, only myself and the Leader of the Council does not, in my view, constitute a debate. It is a statement and a reply, not a debate.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, I am going to take this, because it's only a friendly amendment. I'm going to move to the vote, yeah. I'm going to say that we've debated it. So, I've also already heard that you want a recorded vote. Is that right? Point of order, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 41311 states that the original motion would have a right to reply, which I believe is Councillor Wilson's.
That is true, however, 41311C says that you put the procedural motion first and then if passed, Councillor Wilson gets the right to reply.
That's what we did at the first motion.
Right, so we're moving to vote on the amendment.
It's a procedural motion whether the vote contained the actual intent.
Right, so we're voting on whether to have the vote. Okay? Right. So, recorded vote, Simone.
Councillor Bowe, so indicate for or against moving to the vote. Councillor Beaumont.
For.
Councillor Brinley Edwards. Against. Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Croft.
Against.
Councillor Dafford. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Kazane.
Against.
Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby.
Against.
Councillor Gran.
Against.
Councillor Gutteridge.
Okay.
Councillor Hancock. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Condacor.
Against.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash.
Against.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Longdon.
For.
Councillor Pandare.
Against.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pomfret.
For.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
Against.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans.
Against.
Councillor Walmsley.
Against.
Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Okay, it's cast and vote for. So so we're now going to move to the vote on the amendment.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. I know that Councillor Wilson asked you about this, but I would beg you to reconsider, because I'm afraid it is in black and white. It does in fact negate the meaning of the first motion. I appreciate it might be a motion we might support, but it does in fact
Councillor Chairman, it doesn't, and well, that's my ruling. It doesn't, so we now moving to Councillor Wilson's right to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Well, instead of taking the opportunity that was afforded to her as leader of the council to set out what her vision was for Nuneaton Town Centre and for Bedford Town Centre, put some meat on the bones about what externalising the town centres means, yet again, as we have seen tonight, the leader of the council has taken the opportunity to try and shut down debate to something which is uncomfortable for her to debate. Because residents out there know that our town centres and markets need some tender loving care, to put it mildly, but it appears that this council doesn't share that view either. Now, I recounted this at Cabinet a while ago, I took a colleague of mine at work into the Nuneaton Town Centre because we had a difficult meeting and we thought we'll go somewhere for lunch. And she used to be a resident of Nuneaton, now moved back to her hometown of Coventry. I took her around, it was a market day, and she said to me, Chris, what happened to the market? It used to be so vibrant, there used to be more stalls, it used to be all the way up this street. And I thought, you know what, that's really sad for someone to come in after a couple of years of not coming in, and that was their first impression of walking into our markets and into our town centres. What the leader of the council has done is say this council resolves that Tuesday the 24th of December will be a normal working day. But she has not had any vision, no ambition and no aspiration for what our markets will look like. We are about to go through a multi-million-pound regeneration project, particularly for Nuneaton, and I hope, as much as I support a transforming Nuneaton project, if there is a transforming Bedworth project, I say bring it on, I will support that as well. But the markets will be the sticking plaster that keeps people coming back to our town centres while those regeneration works go on. And these regeneration works, if they go ahead, and we've now seen the master plan which has gone out, it's no longer confidential, if we are to deliver that vision, and it's a vision I support, and the leader knows that because I've sat in the same meeting with her, we need to use all the levers of this council to make that happen and keep residents coming back into our town centres while that happens. It's going to take years to build these things up. Nowhere tonight has the leader of the council taken the opportunity to do that. The motion she has put forward is meaningless. It's not worth the paper it's written on. She could have saved this council 10 pence in photocopying charges, and just actually, if you don't agree with the motion, because you don't want to actually put any flesh on the bone, vote against it. Don't waste 10p on something which actually achieves nothing. Because our market traders expected better, our residents expected better, but unfortunately they've got the same answer: we aren't open for business anymore from the Labour administration. Until you are willing to put flesh on the bone, until you are willing to say to residents, you know what, we're going to go for this full pelt, and until you are willing to actually say what you mean about externalising the markets, residents will not believe you. And that's a great shame, because I have faith in the Transforming Nuneaton project. A lot of people have worked very hard to try and get it off the ground, and it would be a shame if through the actions of this council not showing that vision and leadership, we failed in something which we so desperately need. So I won't support her amending motion as it stands, because it achieves nothing. That's why She could have had cross-party support if she'd have actually said, externalising markets means A, B and C, or actually we'll bring a report to council, or we'll bring a cabinet report, and we can debate that then. But nothing. And that's a deep shame, because she's let our markets down on that front. And I think the market traders deserve better. And so do the people sat in that gallery who have taken 3.5 hours to watch this show, and they haven't actually achieved a lot tonight. It's a real shame. To be honest, it appears that Labour have run out of steam, and they're just holding forth until 2020 because they're given. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor Wilson. So we're now going to move to the vote on the amendment. Do you want a recorded vote?
Sorry, point of clarification. Are we voting on the amendment, or are we voting on the amendment becoming the substantive? Because in which case there needs to be a vote now for it to become the substantive, and then another vote once it becomes a substantive. Could you clarify? I think it would be helpful. I know we've been here for quite a while. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've first of all got to vote on the amendment to see whether it's won or lost.
To become then substantive?
Yes.
Thank you.
So now we're moving to the vote on the amendment. Right, can we just do a show of hands on this then, or are we doing a recording vote? Recording vote, okay.
Indicate for or against the amendment. Councillor Beaumont. For. Councillor Bruni Edwards. Against. Councillor Brown. Against. Councillor Croft.
Against.
Councillor Daffin. For. Councillor Doherty. For. Councillor Elliott. For. Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Gazane.
Against.
Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Graham.
Against.
Councillor Gutteridge.
Okay.
Councillor Hancock.
For.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor.
Against.
Councillor Llewellyn Nash.
Against.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandair.
Against.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pomfret.
For.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
Against.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans.
Against.
Councillor Walmsley.
Against.
Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Casting vote for. Right, so that's now the substantive motion. Right, so now open the debate on substantive motion. Any councillor wish to speak? Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much. I think we've wasted 3.5 hours today, and this motion was absolutely nothing useful. I think we should amend it to actually have the council work on Mondays to Fridays normally.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Councillor Golby.
Just to speak on the substantive motion. I'm just going to pass on some words really from the market traders, because they're absolutely disgusted with you lot. They
order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Golby can. Okay, Councillor Jackson.
What Councillor Golby is doing is not talking to the new substantive motion.
Councillor Golby, can you just stick to the substantive motion? So this is just the council resolves Tuesday, 24th of December 2019 will be a normal working day of this council.
Yeah, I was actually building up to that, if you'd let me draw a breath at least. They're absolutely disgusted with the way that the Labour administration are running things for them at the moment, and they don't get a chance to voice much opinion. I mean, I can't even call it a motion because it really isn't. The sentence that is now in front of us, that the council resolves Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 will be a normal working day for this council, will be absolutely no comfort whatsoever to those traders who lost significant sums of money on the most important trading day of the year in the trading period that's just gone. I spent a lot of time actually on the market. I do walk around, I talk to people regularly, and the opinion of this administration is really, you know, it couldn't really get much worse, to be honest. And again, you should have saved yourself the 10p. Maybe you could have gone out and bought someone a cup of tea out there and had a chat with them or something. You know, it's the cost of a tea bag. They are at their wits' end. And again, this motion, this sentence, is no comfort to anybody that is on their uppers. We pretend in the chamber that you're actually listening, but all you've done is shut down debate. You are not listening because you won't let us speak. This is not listening. This is not allowing us to bring the message to you for any reason. I mean, I can't even impart to you the feeling that is going on out there. And again, referring to the motion, this is absolutely useless to them. They don't want Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 to be a normal working day. It's already going to be a normal working day anyway. They wanted it last year and they didn't want to have to pay £300 for a set of stalls. The vitriol that the residents actually put forward as well, because you denied them the market, that didn't go down very well. People are going to remember this, and I hope they do, because you talk about opportunity and you take opportunity away. You talk about being for equal and for everybody, and yet you just stack the odds entirely against people. People can't work, people can't feed their families, they end up on universal credit. Yeah, well, I'm referring to the motion, yeah, because, you know, Tuesday the 24th of December, people lost a lot of money, and again, I'll repeat it again, the people on the market find this cold comfort and useless, and it just shows the fact that you have actually submitted this as an amendment to a perfectly reasonable motion that was submitted to get the message across that we are supporting markets, we do support people. The fact that you've actually submitted this waste of paper just shows that you're not willing to support people. You've put things in a budget that you've said you're going to rationalise the market. They don't know whether they're coming and going from one week to the next because they don't know whether you're going to pull the rug from underneath them or not. You have not shared any information with anybody. You're supposed to be supporting small businesses. This doesn't support small businesses.
This is just on this one line.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. This one line does not support small businesses and market traders. It doesn't support them. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of their time. They know it. That's why they're walking with their feet. So whether Tuesday the 24th of December, as per your amendment, will be a normal working day of the council is of no consequence if we don't have any market stall holders left to stand out there and work on Tuesday the 24th of December 2019. And if we don't, it's all on you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Philip, as you indicated, so I'm just going to take one more speaker and then move to vote.
Right, okay, I'm pleased that it's going to be open on December the 24th. I hear everything that's said over there. I've listened to everything all evening. Now let's move to the vote.
Right, okay, so Simone. Okay, we'll just have a show of hands on this then. So this is moving to the vote, substantive motion. Okay, so we're taking the vote on the motion first.
Mr. Mayor, what motion are we voting on?
Right, so we're taking the vote on the amendment, which is a substantive motion. Right, so all those in favour, could you raise your hands? Against? Abstain? Yeah. Right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, that concludes tonight's business. Wish you a safe journey home, and thank you.